Asian American Resource Center presents Fran Flaherty, Colonized Women, Reclaiming Our Indigenous Roots. On August 18, 2020, Filipino-American artist Fran Flaherty met with Asian American Resource Center's exhibit specialist Rachel Stewart Chhabra to talk about her exhibit Colonized Women and the community-sourced art project Reclaiming Our Indigenous Roots.
I am Fran. Catherine Ledonio is my maiden name, Flaherty. I live in Pittsburgh. I have 3 children, 3 sons, and 1 grandson. I live in north of Pittsburgh with my husband, my youngest son, and my hearing dog, Olympia. I'm deaf.
Describe how you came up with the Colonized Women and Men pieces and your artistic process. What are some decisions that you made on them, and what do they signify?
We have to admit colonization into and what it's done, what it's colonization's contribution to our present culture. And so I've been thinking about that. And like I said, I read the Boxer Codex from front to back because I was very interested in the history. And it has these beautiful, beautiful drawings of what indigenous Filipinos would look like. And I just, there's so many pages of them. And this book, by the way, the original codex is available online via the Lilly Library at Indiana University. Anybody can download it and see the images. And I realize as I'm reading this book and looking at the images that these are the first pictures, images, the first stereotypes of Filipinos all over the world, in Europe. That didn't really sit well with me. And I said to myself, well, what can I do to make it feel better? When I read this book, I want to feel better. It was kind of a selfish project. I want to feel better when I look at these images. And so I decided I would take these images, I'd copy them and rearrange them to the way I wanted it. That's the way I wanted my ancestors to be presented to the world. Not in other people's terms, but my terms. So I started drawing them and added different flora and fauna from my childhood. I also added a few other elements from the codex in there. But the biggest thing was like putting them on silk, which is a very rich fabric. It's still now it's pretty expensive. It is a symbol of nobility and beauty. And I wanted the girls to be presented that way. And so when it came to the men, I wanted to really drop all of that voyeurism and let them be there, let them live within their flora and fauna. There's definitely different composition when it came to the men, but it wasn't because I'm treating the men differently than the women. It was more of like the practice was evolving to actually even extend it further beyond the Philippine archaeology, the Philippine anthropology of it. The Boxer Codex is mostly about the Philippines, but if you really read the whole thing, they traveled along that area and moved into Siam, which is now Thailand, Japan, China, Malaysia, and all sorts of different places. So, I mean, it documented this entire sort of Southeast Asian area. This is our story now. I'm going to take this and this will be my story now. And so I've had some critics come up to me and say, well, you're just copying what somebody from the 15th century did. And yes, in a way. I mean, because that's what I'm doing. But I'm not copying it, I'm reclaiming it. And if we think about that in modern terms, right? When you make a sketch of something, when you make a sketch of a portrait of somebody, the artist has an ability to include part of themselves into whatever they're making. And that's what I've done.
Let's talk about the community-sourced mural that you're putting together with submissions from the public. Describe how you arrived at the concept for this community project titled Reclaiming Our Indigenous Roots.
As I'm reclaiming all of these images for my work, for my personal work, and my body of work, I've been getting feedback from many people, from Filipino Americans, Asian Americans, who look at my work and say, oh yeah, I really relate to that. I can really relate to that. And somewhere within a year or two of completing this part, part A of the work, I realized that it shouldn't just be me reclaiming. It's just we all should be reclaiming our indigenous roots, whether it's, Asian American or Asian roots or European roots or whatever. We really need to connect to our history in order to understand where we're moving forward. In Filipino, there's a saying, ang hindi lumingon sa pinanggalingan ay hindi makakarating sa kinaroroonan, which means if you don't look back to where you came from, you're never going to get to where you want to go. I felt that was important, especially for young people who were born in this country, who don't really have a physical connection to their home country, to their homeland. It's sort of like abstract. It's really important for us to have that physical connection. And when things are so abstract, right, and the home country is so far and you can't quite wrap your head around it, that's where art and music come in to help bridge that gap. And I want this to continue. I want this even after we've done our workshop. I want to be able to go to other places and say, all right, everybody, let's reclaim our roots and let's put them up in a banner and let's make art about it.
Please describe what your vision for the resulting piece or the resulting mural will look like, and describe an ideal community submission.
You know those Where's Waldo things, where there's just like saturated with people and then you gotta find Waldo? Well, I want everyone to be Waldo and be able to find their work amongst this collection of things and see the oneness and your individuality in that oneness. My ideal community submission would be if each family member families put in a project together. Maybe they'll put their own families. Maybe they'll have collaborative projects with each other. I really want to foster communication and cooperation and care in this. So if you have a child making a collage, doing a reclamation, join them. Either join them with their piece or make your own reclamation while you're sitting with your child.
Do you have any examples, tips, or suggestions to share with folks who want to participate in the activity and submit a piece?
What I want people to do is to just put yourselves into it. Make it your own work. Make it your drawing. So for example, I have this guy, I printed him out, I cut him out, and these pearls were pearls that I had made my own veil on my wedding day. I've had them for 24 years. And I'm like, I need to use them in some artwork. And so these are like leftover scarves. I have this love-hate relationship with apple juice and apples. They were so expensive when we were growing up in the Philippines, and it was just so hard to get. But then I moved here and I had my children drink them like there's no tomorrow. And I have an apple tree in my yard. This thing that was so valuable to me as growing up is abundant now. And it all about whomever's making it, right? So if you guys are out there making this, make it about you. Reclaim it and really put your own things into it, whatever it is. There's no wrong, there's no right, no wrong, there's no aesthetic that we're going for. Just go ahead, look at the people, look at what's in the coloring book, and decide what moves you. I don't want people to walk away from the project with their fist up, like defending their indigenous roots or, no, that's not what this is about. This is about walking away from the project with your arms and your heart open to welcome what other people's thoughts are. You may or may not agree with those thoughts, but I would like people to just have a little bit of openness. Ask questions. I want it to be thoughtful. I want people to think about putting themselves into their work, walking around their houses and looking at things that they would otherwise discard and turning them into art. Let's free the meaning of what art is, because European Western art is a colonized version of culture. The way we imagine, art as in oil paintings to be put in museums, viewed from 6 feet, 7 feet, 10 feet away where security guards are. I understand that that's sort of like the stereotype of most people think about it, art. And to understand that art is about process, art is about having different aesthetics. It's about being able to express yourself, your creativity, and there's no right or wrong to it. Art's about taking chances and putting things together and figuring out what works for you and who you're teaching and your children, things like that. So I would say go for it, think about it, take chances.
Produced by Asian American Resource Center and Fran Flaherty. www.tiny.cc/colonized_women_2020. FranFlaherty.com